Okay, it looks like we're live.
All right.
Hey, Jeff. So,
Hello.
welcome to the show. And
Thank
it's
you.
such a pleasure to have you here today. So, for those of you that haven't met you before, Jeff was one of my mentors from 2015 and has an extensive background in speaking, coaching, helping entrepreneurs. He's helped me a lot personally with my business as well. So, I'm actually just really grateful to have you here today to share your wisdom, especially with some of my audience who are where I was 4 years ago, just starting out and not really sure, which direction to take. So please, if you could share first just a little bit about who you are, what you do, and your journey.
Sure. I'll share a brief background from the place of comprehending where I'm coming from in the information. And then people can go, oh, okay. And they can apply what I have to share because I've been there just starting and coaching and worked with over a million people over the world. I presented in over 13 different countries and had the privilege of sharing stages with like people like Richard Branson, Tony Robbins, DeMartini, and many more. And as well as that, a best-selling author. And I grew up in Silicon Valley, which is where most of the big companies also got started in an entrepreneurial family. Where we were a struggling entrepreneur. My father was a struggling entrepreneur, and then with persistence, he built a company that is well recognized today. So, and being around that environment shifted my perspective on what's possible. And so today, I'd love to share that beautiful merge between, I guess you could say, spiritual work or conscious, whatever you want to call it, the unknown, and the business world, and how they're really together, and how we can merge those two worlds so we can make money, have what we love, and do what we love, and spend time with people we love, and make more money for our families, loved ones, and amplify what we're here for.
Amazing. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, my first question for you today, and I have so many, you have so much wisdom, but imagine somebody is where I was 4 years ago. So, just starting out, not really clear on what they're doing yet. They have a gift, something that they want to share with the world, and they don't know how to get that out into the world. What tips can you give those people who are just at that very early stage?
Sure. I mean, the tip I remember giving you many years ago, which is to actually start and not try and get it perfect before you begin. They call it, um, be willing to be perfectly imperfect. And I make a lot of mistakes. I still do today to continue to go to the next inflection point. Not because it's a place to go, but because it's what there is to do to grow and to learn. And you can't steer a parked car. You got to be moving. And the way, the first step in finding your way is to begin and take action in a way. And that's something that you did, and it's been an amazing journey for you. And watching you along the way has been incredible. You've impacted so many lives, and I'm grateful because we all rise together right now. And through the work that I was able to share with you, and you were able to apply it, and with the alchemy of what you bring, you're able to impact thousands of people, and probably tens of thousands by now, or hundreds of thousands by now, and with just the work you do. And so my feedback specifically and tip is to be willing to get it to be perfectly imperfect and start and invest in yourself.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's very valuable for people who are just not knowing what to do. Um, the other thing, I remember a while ago you said to me, you gave me this whole explanation of like there's things that you know and there's things that you don't know, and then there's things that you don't know that you don't know. And what are some of those things for people out there, and how can they overcome, that like what's totally unknown to them?
Well, there's always a lot of things that we don't know that we don't know. But I would say if you're just starting the areas that you don't know, is that you have to pay for access. And it's not about who you know, it's who knows you. And be willing to put yourself out there and be seen. Uh, so the area that people don't know they don't know is it requires a lot more persistence than people think. Um, I was I remember my dad struggling to make ends meet for the family, and but he just kept going. He kept going, and this company was started on a kitchen table, and seeing him just persist, persist, persist. He chose to be bigger than his circumstances, and many people when they're just starting choose their circumstances to be bigger than they are. And so through the I was talking yesterday. So through the persistence, he was able to recognize and remember that he was bigger than circumstances. And what began to take form um, was a publicly traded company. And the same with my business is not a publicly traded company, but what began to move forward was speaking engagements, opportunities, new clients, and more money and more impact.
Mhm.
So the areas that they don't know is that it's going to be potentially harder than they think. And so they have to remember that they're harder. They are made of a substance harder than what is out there in themselves, and to develop a backbone and to be willing to keep going. And the amount of attention they need to actually create, which is continued persistence, which is posting, social media, CTAs, which is called calls to action. They need to make more calls to action. And the common thing that they don't know is that they think that if they make one or two posts, and then a week, and then they do that for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, it's going to get them where they need to go. When really what it requires is consistent action, persistence, and and then, like I said, investing in themselves as well, like people like yourself, who actually are willing to sort out what to do in what order. And
Mhm.
oftentimes they know what to do, they know all these things to do, but they don't know what to do in what order. And when they actually do things and they find the mentor that's walked that path before, they know what to do in what order. And a biggest misconception is that they start solving problems that don't exist. And when they invest in a mentor, what actually happens is they solve the problems that matter instead of the problems that don't exist. And when you don't have a mentor, you're solving problems that don't exist most of the time, and you're wasting time. And so when, like, there's a difference between hustling and being in flow. And I'll distinguish the difference. Hustling requires is a lot of action in a lot of different places, just massive action everywhere, which might be getting their website perfect, writing their copy, making sure it really feels right and authentic, and making sure it's really perfect. And it might mean writing the content of their next workshop and making sure that that's perfect, or making the perfect video. And when actually, when they do that, they're spending time on things that don't necessarily generate them revenue.
Mhm.
And in the beginning, the first couple, at least to make 5,000, 10,000 a month, they need to make more calls to action and make more sales, and that requires marketing. That that requires consistent CTAs, calls to action, and be willing to not be liked. If you are in this business to be liked, you'll quickly find out that no matter how nice you are, you'll find that you'll never please everybody. And so our job is to stay true to who we are. As that shifts and evolves, it will change. But stay true to who we are, stay true to our message, and keep going and keep getting clear about who you want to work with. So the other area that they tend to not see is they tend to try and work with everybody, and they blast a message to everybody and hoping everyone will like it. When in fact, the best thing they can do is get crystal clear about who their avatar actually is. When I say avatar, I specifically mean what their core problems of their clients are. For example, let's say they're in spiritual work, their core problems might be overwhelm, worry, lack of action, lack of confidence, and they need to make videos, make posts specifically addressing those core problems that their clients have. So they might do an example video, like in this video, I'm going to discuss anxiety and how to resolve anxiety, and maybe it's a 3 to 5 minute video. Generally, it's 3 to 5 minutes for Facebook, things like that nature. And the other thing that I wish I would have known earlier on was the power of batching. So, for example, I was just leading a workshop this Sunday, and the whole workshop was filmed. And what we do with that content is we take that content, and then I send it off to my team, and that content is then split up into multiple videos that are 3 to 5 minutes long. Then it's also split into multiple stories that are 15 seconds long or so on Instagram, and then also into IGTV videos as well, and then also YouTube videos, and some of those are a little longer. And then they're also transcribed and put to blogs. So if I wish I would have known that much earlier, because what I would have done is I would have done even more batching, which is take that content and reposition it and use it all over and continually use it all over. The thing is many of them are overwhelmed with all the posting that they actually have to do. And if they develop systems to actually do the posting for them, then they wouldn't be so overwhelmed with spending times on things like posting and clicking and everything else. And what's necessary as well is to develop a team first. So they don't know is generally they also are not willing to invest in a team. And I mean, a small team, it could even be get a cleaner. So you're spending time on top of funnel, which would be the things that are about being seen. And then it'd be spending time, and then they'd have a little more time there. Then a bookkeeper to get clear about their numbers and get clear about one comes in, one comes out. That could be the beginning of their team. Then from there, someone offshore to cut the movies up and reposition them and post for you. The list goes on and on. But I wish I would have known the power of batching, the power of persistence, and also to not get it perfect and be willing to be perfectly imperfect and just begin.
Yep. That's amazing advice. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yep.
So when you're an entrepreneur, it's guaranteed that you will fail. Like, it just depends on how big and when and how many times and, all that. I'd love for you to share with our audience today one of the biggest failures that you've had and how you've actually overcome that, and also how much money you lost and all of that sort of detail.
Sure. So many failures. Let's see. When would be? I think my biggest failure, quote failure, was doing my best to not fail. So literally, sometimes I would not take risks, and I would just kind of be very hesitant and try to think it through and make sure it strategically made sense instead of actually feeling and going with my instinct of what the right move was next and trusting that instinct. But this can be a double-edged sword because sometimes as entrepreneurs at the beginning, we're actually programmed, there's a program to play small. And so something that comes in gives you a big opportunity might not feel right because you're actually designed. We as when we're just starting could be designed to actually be mediocre because it's part of the program. And then somebody comes in that goes, here's an opportunity to make 6-7 figures or more, and it doesn't feel right. But that's because it's going against our whole ecology as a person. And our ecology, and what I mean by that is like the ecosystem of the people that surround us that we've designed to keep us stable in a mediocre existence. And when I say mediocre, it's not necessarily wrong. I mean, specifically, it's actually necessary for the next inflection point to move forward. But when we surround ourselves with people who also confirm the identity of playing small or also trying to be nice to everyone or to please everybody, then what happens is when we start to do different moves, then they start to question us, and then we start to question ourselves instead of actually moving forward. So what you'll find is as you start to move forward, that you might lose a few friends. So my biggest failure was not trusting that part of myself. Okay, and to move forward in the face of the adversity. Second biggest failure, I would say, was trying to be liked by everybody. And what happened for me was I would often try to do things to be liked instead of actually saying what needs to be said to move things forward and to create transformation. And what that cost me was impact. And I would say it also cost me revenue as well. So my biggest failure was how we related to failures at the beginning. And the second biggest failure, I'd say the third biggest failure was, but I don't really into its failures, but the biggest piece, because there's no failure, there's just feedback. But I guess the biggest piece of feedback I got was when I lost millions and millions of dollars. I think I was 28. I don't know how long ago, 10 years. So, and what I was trying to build wealth. I was building wealth through base hits, and which is a metaphor of baseball, which is base hits, small wins, small wins, small wins. And I tried to go for a home run, which would be a very big deal, huge deal in investing. And ultimately, what happened was the investment failed, and I lost a lot of money. And but that was an expensive lesson, but it also was very worthwhile because I made it worthwhile because I took that lesson and I apply it today. So there's no failure, there's just feedback. But another thing is I've sometimes related to failure as a force instead of a fact. So failure can be a force which stops us, or failure can be or the fear of failing. The fear of failing can be a force, or the fear of failing can be a fact, which is I'm afraid. Okay, great, fact. I'm going to move on. So I know that many people that attend, I think we're getting a little bit. Can you hear me? Okay. I know that for myself that when this happens, when it's just a fact, I can note it as a fact, but keep moving. And that's the power of persistence.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. So it sounds like from everything that you've said, the key to actually moving is actually just to keep going. Like that's the one thing I've taken from everything that you've said so far. It's like no matter what happens, you have to keep moving. You have to take the next step, and just accepting that, okay, this thing has happened. I'm going to learn from this, and then I'm going to look ahead and keep going. And I think, well, I see a lot of people that are starting out who they fail before they've even started, because they, like, statistics say that, I think it's 70% of small businesses fail in the first 5 years. And it's ridiculous. And I look at that and I go, why? Because then I see people like yourself who are very successful. And so, like, what have you done differently that other people aren't doing? And it sounds like it's just you've picked yourself up and you've just carried on and kept going.
Exactly. And I think another blind spot I've had before is by bypassing the real work that needs to get done and clouding it as spiritual work.
Mm-hmm.
So it was interesting. I was in a workshop yesterday, and there was a man who did deep shadow work with people, and a really good guy. And he was very comfortable in the transformational process oriented work, which is excavating emotions, getting clear about where our shadows are. And he swam very comfortably in those waters. And I said, okay, now you're going to swing into the material world a bit more, which is no different than the immaterial world, both valid and both sacred. And I said, okay, you want to. He goes, well, my biggest challenge is I have money problems. I have an unhealthy relationship with money, and I need to do a process about it. And he expected me to do some transformational process with him, and that was great, but that would have been more of the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I said is, okay, you ready for your transformational process? Go through your phone, write down 10 leads and be curious about your youth program. And he wrote 10 leads on the board. And I said, okay, next step is send this message to all 10 leads. And we wrote a script. And he was really afraid to do it. It was his shadow. And then he messaged them. And then people started responding. And then he had to take the next step of the process and actually convert those into opportunities for himself. And that's why I love teaching sales and speaking, because it allows us to make the impact we're here to make. And essentially what showed up was actually, he had to actually be seen. He had to actually not hide in the shadow of spiritual work and bypassing. And so there are many people who are just in business who hide in the business world, and they're busy, making money, but they don't want to do the process work and the transformation work. Then there are many people who hide in the transformational work, and they just are focused on the process. They become the process themselves. They're dramatizing. They're telling their stories, and they feel they need to process things before they ever get started. Oh, I'm not ready yet emotionally. And they hide in that world, and they won't go into the business world. So both are valid, and both are a paradox, and both are really important to integrate.
Yeah, definitely. I'm so glad you brought that up, because especially with the niche that I'm in with energy healing, I see that all the time, and everybody just wants a process. It's like I literally get people coming to me that are saying, oh, I have problems with abundance, because that's the buzzword in spirituality, right?
Yeah.
Abundance.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, I'm having trouble with abundance. And I say to them, great, go learn marketing and sales, come do my business course. And they're like, oh, no, can you just give me a meditation for that? And I'm like, well, like, you can do the meditation, but like, you actually have to get out there and like put yourself on social media and do the actual business work, because no matter how many meditations you do, until you actually write a blog post with a call to action, nobody's going to reach out to you, right?
And it's like, and often the meditation is write a lead list and make more posts and have more CTAs, call to action, and speak on more stages. That's your meditation. And if you just sit there and meditate and avoid it, then you'll have to come to terms with the fact that you're just afraid, and that you're letting a fear become a force. And until you can own that shadow part of you, you're going to struggle financially. And then you'll have a vision board that never actually happens. And then you'll get more frustrated. And then you'll reconfirm the identity of not feeling good enough. And then that just reconfirms more lies about yourself. And ultimately you hide in spiritual work.
Yep. I think you just hit the nail on the head there.
Well, I have, because I've worked with so many quote spiritual entrepreneurs, and I've also done it myself.
Yeah. I can relate as well, completely. And I'm glad that I had you very early on, because I signed up with your program, I think, within the first 2 months of me opening my business, which at the time was, a massive leap for me, but like just saved me so much time and wasted energy. Otherwise, I would have done that.
Yeah, and you know what? It was a big.
I guess my next question.
The internet's a little splotchy because we have some rain here, but I'll share that when you did do that, I remember, and you were very afraid, but you did it anyway. And it was also over a $10,000 investment, and you were only 2 months in the business. And the question you asked me is, I don't know if I feel ready. I was like, well, you're never going to feel ready. Let's just do this. And you were terrified and scared, and you're like, well, I'm going to do it anyway. And you did it. And then you start figuring out what to do in what order. And here you are today. So congratulations. It's amazing.
Thank you. And the bit you probably didn't see was a week after I signed, after the cooling off period, I had a meltdown because life was like totally testing me. And it was actually Sam who I spoke to, and she just like kept me back on that path. And I'm so grateful for that conversation with Sam, because like everything fell apart within 7 days, right? And then suddenly it was like the universe was saying to me, are you actually ready for this? Are you really going to do this? And now I look at that and go, that was the quantum leap. Like that was the leap between my old life and my new life. And if I hadn't made that jump, I never would be where I am today. And I'm so grateful to have had people to help me see that. I had to stay in alignment with the vision of where I was going instead of being stuck in where I was. And I think there's a lot of people that are stuck in just their stories of, oh, but I can't do this. And they're working with what they have rather than working into, well, I guess, striving towards potential.
Right. And also being willing to go into the unknown and be willing to do the areas that they're afraid of. Like one of the areas that, at the time, I know for me, when I first began, I was afraid of speaking. I was afraid of writing. I was afraid of being seen. And I'm sure you were too. And you did it anyway. And that's what it requires. And ultimately, yes, those are hard, but you actually realize that we develop courage. It's not about getting over our fears, it's developing courage. And when we invest in ourselves and we have people around us like Sam, myself, and you people like yourself that support others in that, it supports us in light, continuing to keep the fire stoked of courage, which is what's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
This business requires courage. And if you guys, and for the people out there that are sharing a message of spirituality and growing yourself, oh, the power just went out. Okay. It's a little stormy here. So you can hear me okay?
I can, yeah.
Oh, okay. Good thing I have battery on my phone, on my computer. so essentially,
I saw that picture though. It's interesting.
Yeah,
but
you
guys need the rain, so I'm like, all right, cool. Like,
yeah, rain, please rain. It's good, It's a
yes.
nice opportunity to handle things. So, what I would share would be that I'm a little thrown off by the power. Oh, there it goes. Okay. So essentially, this is our life. So essentially what I mean is that when people invest in themselves, it creates a blip like that just happened. And you jump to the timeline that you're really here for, to be your best version of yourself. And everything that's between you and that will come up. And that persistence is what's necessary. But it makes it a lot easier when you have a support group around you.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's not going to happen for free. I hate to break it to people, but it's not. You got to invest in yourself, because that's you investing in yourself and saying to the universe, you're serious.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And that actually leads into my next question, because the particular, I guess, subset of people that I work with, there's still this huge shadow around spirituality and people who think it should be given away for free. And I follow amazing, like speakers and leaders, and you see on their ad posts, there's always like at least one person that goes, oh, why are they charging money for this? Like, for example, you've probably seen Vishen Lakhani on Mindvalley, and I follow his posts quite closely. There's always people on there. He gives away his free masterclass, and then of course at the end of the masterclass they sell something, right? Because they want people to continue getting that change.
Yeah, of course.
And people are always complaining about it. And so I'd love to hear your perspective on why that's completely impractical and unreasonable.
Well, it's practical if you want practical results in practical life. I mean, it's really practical to just expect everything for free, and then live like everyone else. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just you're not going to get anything different. So the practical thing to do is to buy into that, and the impractical thing to do is to actually step in something beyond that and invest in yourself. And when we do impractical things at times, and we do things that are unreasonable, we get unreasonable results. So we get what we put in.
That's true. Yeah. And I also feel like there's this, it's like this unspoken rule with the universe, where when you invest a certain amount into yourself, like your training and development, that it unlocks a particular level of access to abundance. Because I've noticed that basically what I can sell my programs for goes up the more I invest in myself. Like, for example, if I haven't invested $100,000 in myself, I can't charge $100,000 in myself. Right?
Seems to be a correlation between two. Yes.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you've noticed that as well in your own journey, because that's something just it's come up through experience for me.
Oh yeah. I mean, absolutely. My client that I work with hired Grant Cardone for 100 grand for 6 phone calls, and she charges. And then after she did that, she obviously charges 100,000 for her services one-on-one, and she's got plenty of clients paying for it and investing in it and getting great results. But people think, oh, $100,000 for 6 phone calls, what a ripoff. But what they don't see is the power of that proximity and the access. You know, we're all going to Las Vegas and going to 10X with diamond tickets. There's 11 of us going, and through doing that, there's access to opportunities and doorways. So, but people want it for free, and you can't do it for free. You just can't. You want to add. The more successful you get, the more you want to work with people that are actually committed, and the money is the voting system for that. But if you don't have much money, then you need to take a leap of faith sometimes with yourself. And oftentimes people aren't willing to do it, not because the program isn't good, but because they're afraid to back themselves, because they don't believe in themselves.
Right. Yeah, I think you've raised something very interesting there in that, because money's everywhere, right? Like I mean, you can go to a bank and get a loan if you really had to. Like, it's not impossible to get money. But yeah, I mean, that makes sense. If somebody doesn't back themselves enough to do the work and trust that they will get the value out of the program, then they might be a bit more afraid to make that leap, right?
Absolutely.
Doesn't have to do with the program.
No, yeah, and some people, the work gets done when they just make the investment too. They actually reframe all their beliefs about what's possible.
Yeah. Oh, I've definitely had that myself. Like, these days I sign up for programs just because I know that when I invest it's going to unlock like a new opportunity. And so the last time I signed up to, I think it was like a $70,000 program, I didn't even blink about it because it was like, oh yeah, that's the next step. And it's like, you just do it, you know? Yeah. And I know that for some people, like for a lot of people listening to this, they'll listen to that and like, they're probably freaking out right now, like even thinking about spending 70 grand on themselves. But everyone that I know who is even remotely successful in this space has spent, 6 figures a year or more actually getting the training in order to be able to build the business and have the right connections and get that real, like, I guess it's the top of the range, like what's new in the industry, because everything takes time, right? It's the same as like the fashion industry. It's like Gucci will develop something and then like 2 years later, you might find a version of it somewhere in Target. But to actually get what's at the top, you have to be like at the show with the tickets, front row, making the connections, and I feel like it's very, very similar in the space that we're in, where it's a lot about who you know and who knows you and what you actually get invited to and what spaces you're able to move in. And the other aspect of this is also then the types of people that you surround yourself by. And I remember I think it was one of the first, you did this diagram, you have like all the seats. Do you want to explain that one?
Yeah, sure. So this is a concept where if there is a you in the middle, and not you, but like the entrepreneur in the middle, and then you can hear the thunder, and then around you, we usually have 7 chairs, let's say. And these 7 chairs are called empty chairs. And around you, you will place people in those chairs. There'll be one person, might be the person, and this is the beginning of the journey, okay? So let's just go here. At the beginning of the journey, let's say you aren't making much money and you're just starting a business. So surrounding you, let's say everyone makes about, let's say, $50,000 to $110,000 a year. That's who's surrounding you. Those people have a different mindset than people making $500,000 or more. And what's around, and there's nothing wrong with those people, to be clear. It's just they're surrounding it. And then you go to those people and you say, I'm starting a business. Now, one of those chairs will represent maybe your dad, or it is your dad or your mom. And they'll say, don't do that. You don't start a business. You're crazy to invest $70,000. or they'll say, or you say, I want to raise my price points. Another person in the chair is there to says that's too expensive, or you say, what do you think? You get advice from somebody else, and they go, uh, I'm gonna go start a program. I'm gonna start speaking on stage, and someone else in the chair, the third chair, says, "Oh, there's a lot of speakers out there, or a lot of coaches. What makes you? You're just gonna get lost in noise." And they confirm, and because our biggest need as a human being is to maintain identity coherence, and so maintaining identity coherence is the biggest survival mechanism. People, we don't want to lose our identity, and so that particular person has started out with the identity of not being good enough, um, mediocre mediocre results, and playing safe. So they've surrounded themselves with people who also share that identity. And when they try to step out of it, those people are then threatened by that person stepping out of it because they have to then face themselves. So what begins to happen is you start stepping out in the first part of the journey. You make an investment, maybe 10 grand plus, and you ask your friends around you or your partners or whatever, and they all think you're freaking crazy. And then if you keep going, what happens is you lose some friends, and a few of those chairs turn empty. And a few of those friends go, what are you doing? They get curious, and they might join you. Then you're kind of alone by yourself with no chairs around you for, let's say, 6 months or so. But one of those chairs is the one you invested in. And they go, no, keep going, keep going. Then you're alone with maybe you and that coach for like 6 months or whatever. And then what happens is you're now in a different network, and then you open your eyes, and around you are other people that are filling the chairs of opportunity, and each person then confirms a different set of beliefs, the one that's more true to who you are. And then you say, hey, I'm about to invest $70,000 to go to the next inflection point, and the other person goes, that's awesome, do it. And you go, hey, I'm going to raise my price points, and the other person goes, you should raise it more, like you have more to give. Or you might go, I'm a little afraid to do this, to go speak on the stage, and one of the other chairs goes, you got this, go, keep going. And your ecosystem, your tribe becomes more congruent with, I guess you could say, your true nature or your soul, and they support that versus the programming. And so it is normal as you begin to awaken. And I don't mean awaken like spiritually. I mean the beautiful integration between material and immaterial world. As that begins to happen, you will feel alienated for a bit of time. You'll question yourself, normal. You'll deal with all your stuff about fear of being rejected, fear of being alone, all that comes up. Then you look around, and there's no chairs around. Then what happens is those chairs get filled with incredible human beings like yourself who say, keep going. And then all of a sudden you open your eyes, and wow, like it's a completely different life. It's a life by design versus a life by programming.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. I've heard you say that many, many times, and it's still relevant because we're all growing, right? So that story was relevant to me when I first started. It's relevant to me now. And I look at the different ecosystems, and they're still evolving and changing. And I find that each time you get into a new, I call them vibrational shifts. So each time you have a vibrational shift and you get into a new frequency, then your surroundings change and the people change, and like your whole system changes. And then I'm sure you can probably agree with this, that actually gets easier in a way, because the more you get unstuck from like the matrix and the programming and the old beliefs and stuff, instead of like trudging through the mud, you're flying, and you have people around you that are flying, and then you can move faster and you can do bigger things and you can have more impact, right?
100%. And it's about expansion. I do a program with a business partner of mine named Kate Chivy Gray, and we do a program called Proximity, and it's a $50,000 program, and it gives people proximity and access to all kinds of things, and it's amazing, and it's about expansion. And what Kate says is we must be always expanding. If you start to feel contracted, that's when you want to push out and expand, continue expansion. It's not necessarily about, people can hear this and go, oh, this is about being successful and getting some sort of destination. No, this is about expansion and continued growth within yourself. Your business our businesses are like part can be part of this quote spiritual journey, but not because there's a destination, but simply to just keep expanding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I very much see business and spirituality actually as one and the same, because who I am in my business and who I am when I'm sitting and meditating isn't actually a different person. It's the same person. It's
Yes.
just the actions are different. So me sitting on my couch meditating in the morning versus me sitting at my laptop deciding what content to put out has the same level of presence. And so the internal feeling in both is actually the same. And I think this is where people who are just starting out are still in that, like that duality where they're like, this is my spiritual time and this is my business time, and not actually seeing business as a spiritual practice.
And when they do that, they hide in their quote spiritual work, and they actually call it spiritual when it's actually far from it. It's actually bypassing.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So for someone who is, quite obviously successful in business, what is the next stage for someone like you? Like, where are you moving to?
Um, it's funny. It's like I'm not moving anywhere, but I'm not moving anywhere, but I'm expanding, and by putting myself around people where I feel like there's a bigger game to play. So,
Mhm.
like for example, like 10x, there's Grant put a room of together 30,000 people. So for me, I've never put a room with 30,000 people together. The biggest stage I've ever spoken on is 7 or 8,000 people. So where I'm moving to is and expanding to um, is speaking at conferences like 10x, and also into more of the venture capitalist space as well, and supporting other entrepreneurs in amplifying what they're here for. I love amplifying other people's missions, and so my biggest thrill is expansion. And so for me, when I found out about 10x being 30,000 people, I was like, well, that's a game worth playing. Why not? Let's figure out. Let's discover who I am, because that gives me butterflies in my stomach. It makes me a little nervous. So let's go play for that. And so that's where I'm going. It's where I've already been.
So are you speaking at this or attending this?
This one I'm attending with my client who is her coach. I'm sorry, he is she she has hired him as a coach, and we're bringing 11 people in our program there. I think 11 or 15, I can't remember. And so we're all have $20,000 tickets, and we're in what's called diamond tickets. And so because of she invested in access, what happens is we're networking with these people, we're getting to know them, and then and the outcome of this will probably be new opportunities. And my intention is to speak on 10x, not this time, but I rarely go to conferences unless I'm speaking at them. But because we are in such a high leveraged opportunity with really big opportunities to network, then this is the opportunity to actually be seen, be heard, and to find out how I can provide value to this level of game.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. And it's nice to know that, people like yourself, you're still striving for something. Obviously, you're playing the game at a very different level to most of the people that are going to be watching this. But even for you to have that aspiration and to go, in a sense, you're going back to being a student, right? Because you're going from being on the stage to being back in the room, and it's just a different room. And
Yep.
then it gives you that next level of leverage so that, you can then have those bigger opportunities. So I'm really looking forward to actually seeing how this pans out for you. Because if in a year's time, you're like on the stage, I'll be like, wow, like that's awesome.
Yeah, it would probably result in that. And my other result that is also, I think Kate will end up on the women's conference, which is thousands of women the day after Connects, and my goal is to have her on there as well, and I think that'll happen. That could happen this time, who knows, or the next time, but it will happen. And essentially, yeah, like what you just said, being a student again, because when I first began, I went to lots of workshops and I was just a student, and I attend the VIP parties, and so I'm just full circle again. Here we go again, next level, fun.
Right. But it's like so much bigger this time around.
Yeah, it's bigger, and it's, but I used to relate to it like I had to get somewhere to feel significant about myself.
Yeah.
And now it's a different place. It's just what there is to do. Like Alan Watts says, birds sing because they sing. I'm just doing what I'm here to do. And why not expand? Whereas before, I think it was a lot of getting ahead, or getting to, was about a destination. It was about, deep down, I didn't feel good enough. I didn't feel like I was worthy, so I wanted a big applause. Now I'm just like, whatever. It's something to do, and it's fun, and I get to expand and grow, and I like being in a room at times where I feel like a small fish.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm
Yeah.
not in those kind of conversations, I get a little bored. And I want to be challenged. I want to grow. You know, Michelangelo, they asked him how they made the statue of David, and he said they chipped away everything that wasn't David, and that's how they made it. That's how he made it. And so for me and myself right now, it's I want to keep chipping away and discovering more and more about who I am and by identifying the areas I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really beautiful way to put it. I like that.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I don't know where I learned it. Somewhere, some speaker at some conference probably shared it, or
Yeah.
There was a woman that I was at Keller. I was coaching at Keller Williams, which is the second largest real estate company in the world, and they have Ken and I would coach all their top brokers that were doing $1 million plus. We ran these programs called Bold, and this woman is the one that gave me that metaphor, the founder of that. You know, she built a good program. So yeah.
That's so cool. I know that you've also spoken on stages like, Tony Robbins and John DeMartini and that. Mm-hmm. How many events did you have to attend before you actually got up on that stage?
Wow. I mean, I'll start with when I began. I was 21. I think I was attending a seminar, learning, skilling up, from 21 till I was in a seminar or in some sort of training every 2 weeks, maybe a week and a half, in a room, something like that, for 6 years, attending, learning, skilling up, paying my investing, and then part of that then what began to happen was I started speaking and sharing some of the content I was learning, and then I would speak. Sometimes I would speak 200 days a year. From when I was 27 to like 30 or so, just consistently speaking and refining. And now it's less, but it's more impactful. So attending seminars at the beginning, quite a bit, every 2 weeks, speaking 200 days a year plus, for years. So people just think it's going to happen. You speak once a month, and it's not going to happen. You got to get the experience.
Right. And it's so nice to hear you say that, because there are people out there who don't actually know what happens behind the scenes. They think you can just get up on a stage after you've done some weekend course and everybody's going to come, right? And same with because, I had my studio at City Space, which has shifted and transformed now. So I'm no longer hiring the space out. But back when I was, people would come to me and they've done like a 2-day, Reiki course or something. And they put it together the event, and then they pay the venue, which at the time was like, I don't know, not even $200 a day, right? And then they get disappointed when nobody comes. And I saw this time and time again. And this is actually where I started seeing the gap in the market between spirituality and business, because there were all these people spending time learning skills, but not actually learning how to get themselves out there. And I think, speaking plays such a big part in that, because that is how you get yourself known, right?
And I used to think it was just speaking on stages, but speaking consists of speaking on podcasts, speaking on Facebook Lives, speaking like what you're doing, speaking on your Insta stories, speaking on IGTV. It means speaking on all stages consistently. And it's what it requires, and now we have this opportunity that I didn't have when I first started, which is social media. And it's such a great opportunity for people. But people go, oh, it's too saturated. Oh, there's too many people. But actually, if you just keep going, most people aren't willing to do the work. And it'll turn. And the algorithms work in our favor. If someone doesn't want to see your content, the algorithms in Facebook won't show your content, as Gary Vee says. But the continued distinction is people live in a fantasy about what it actually takes. You can't just go attend some weekend workshop and then get on a stage with 3,000 people or even a couple hundred people and nail it. It doesn't work that way. You've got to continue to refine it. And I've made so many mistakes. When I first started speaking, my first quote speaking engagement, I put on an expo, a real estate expo at the time. And there was a room for speaking. And I was like, I want to introduce the next speaker. And this guy had a lot of speaking experience. He was in real estate space. And I got up on stage and I literally fumbled all my words, couldn't even remember what I was going to say. It was a mess. My business partner at the time had to get up and say, and I had to go, oh, and then my business partner had to save me, jump on stage and introduce him. That was my first speaking gig. And it was a mess.
I love that so much, because Because if you can do that, other people can get over their fears, right?
Absolutely, it's totally, and they can develop that courage to do it. I mean, I
And
feel
you're
like
still a speaker. So if that was your first speaking gig and you're here, like, what is it, 15, 20 years later,
I
right?
survived.
You're
Yeah.
speaking and it's like, oh, like that just didn't deter you at all.
It was like a moment of, oh crap. And then, but I knew inherently if I just kept going, it would work out because I
Yeah.
could feel it. And there was this other time, it was funny because many people might be able to relate to this. I think I was in elementary school and I wanted to raise money for some charity. And I grabbed the video camera from my parents and I put the video camera on and I had this knowing that this was in my blood or something. And I put the camera on and I tried to make a video and I fumbled it so bad. It was such a mess. Like, hey everybody, welcome to this. And I just couldn't actually speak well in front of camera. And and my parents, they still remind me today, do you remember that time you tried to do a video for that? But what I'll say to you is, I'll say, you know what? There was music inside of me, but I didn't know how to play the music. And so what I did, but there was this feeling that I was already knew what I was doing. I mean, I'm gonna be clear, I still have a lot more to learn about speaking, but I would say, yeah, I probably have hit the point in my life where I can do it, and I'm better than most because why? Simply because I've done it longer. It's like I'd have to be an idiot not to know how to learn some things for 15 years and hundreds of days a year doing it. So, but I must have known that that's in my blood and my pattern as a human being. So I confused that when I was in elementary school that I'd be good at it because I was probably tapping. I'm gonna get a little spiritual here. I was probably already tapping into the future timeline that already existed, where I was doing this without even thinking about it. And I was feeling that, and I was like, well, this should be easy. Let's just get up and talk. And I was a mess. But what I had to be humbled by, like Carl Jung says, you got to be willing to be a fool. And I felt that fool inside of me, not willing to do it, and that fumbling my words, making a mess, being imperfect, and I had to feel that in order to tune the instrument that was necessary. And the instrument was my body, was my nervous system, to remember what was already destined to happen, which has already happened, which is the version of me that's here now. I'm glad it didn't stop me.
That's amazing. Jeff, I could talk to you all day. You have so many amazing stories to share.
It's been and you know what, that's what happens is, like, I know you have so many stories as well because you're now on the court, and so you have all these client stories and you have these adventures, and I know you take people on retreats and there's endless stories. And then one story, if you go and you put yourself out there, you develop a vault of stories and information because you have so much more experience versus a person who hides out only learning and getting skills. But when you have worked with a lot of people, then you get more and more stories for the vault.
So for somebody who wants to know a little bit more from you, you did mention you had an audiobook. Do you want to just tell our friends about that?
Yeah, sure. They can. It's an audiobook called Success 2.0, and I wrote it when I took a couple of years off and from speaking. There was about a year and a half I didn't post anything on Facebook, and it's called. They can go to www.success, the number 2book.com.
Success.
And yep, success2book.com. And there's a whole audio in there because I like to listen to audios. And there's a PDF as well. It's totally free. And it's really about what happens after you reach success by everyday standards. And as well, I have other, and from there they can go to my website, Jeffrey, JEFFREY, and there's like 14 tips on selling. All these things is important. So yeah, plug in and you'll get all kinds of free stuff.
Amazing. I'm sure there's so much more wisdom in there. And I've read some of your previous books as well and gained a lot from those as well, because obviously you know what you're doing, and it's nice to have that perspective from somebody who has been there. I mean, sometimes you just, in this particular industry, it's like you're walking blind in the dark, and unless you have someone who can point the way and show you, this is how you do it, I think you can waste a lot of time. So I'm sure people will gain a lot from taking your experience, taking your lessons, and hopefully applying them into their own life and making good use of that.
I hope so too, because it's the work that you do and helping people get into their hearts and remember who they are, and they can bring that out to the world, so we can all go back to the original premise of what it is to be a human being, and we can amplify and all rise up together. So like, we're all a team here, and the work you're doing with your people is supporting me, and vice versa. Yeah, plug in, and people should be working with you and investing with you so they can save time. and they can bring the word to the world.
Yeah, exactly. I've got so many stories as well. Clients who my clients now who are just starting I've got a business alchemy program. They're already selling like $400 to $600 packages. And I tell those clients stories of when I used to work with you. And I remember the first time I sold my first $450 package, I got so excited, but it took me like, I think at least a year to get there. Whereas for them, they're like 1 month in. And so they've skipped like that whole like 12 months because
I know.
this is where you start. So I started off, selling things by donation, and then $20 things, and then $100 things. And then I, worked my way up to $450. Whereas my girls are starting at $600.
It's amazing. I see the same thing. Like what took me 5 years is taking people 6 months.
Yeah.
And that's because we're all passing it down, this wisdom down as knowledge, and people are learning from it. And that's what it's all about. And then ultimately, we're all helping each other. It's just a better world.
And it's like the whole society is rising together, which is that's what my mission is, and yours as well. Actually like seeing how the planet is ascending in vibration, and just like putting ourselves into those roles where we can be there to support others, so that when somebody else, lights up and says, I'm now ready to serve the world, people like you and I can be there to say, right, let me show you how.
Exactly. And when they say serve the world, we always want to make sure they're serving themselves too. There's the universe is a perfect accounting system. When we do what's in our highest good, the universe takes care of everybody else. So the biggest thing that I feel that you really support people on is them looking after themselves too while they serve the world.
Yeah, and being in that alignment.
Exactly, so that they can have the money they need to make and the skills they need, so that they can actually not just share a message but embody the message.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's beautiful. So I think we'll wrap it up there. I don't know that you have to head off. So yeah, if anybody wants your book, we'll put the link in the comments below. And also for anyone who's curious about working with me, I have a 2-day live event coming up in a couple of weeks. It's called The Awakening, and it is designed for people who are in the spiritual business world. So merging the worlds together, actually putting into practice that we talked about. So I'll put those links in the comments as well.
Definitely do that. And I know you're in the Perth area, and just get involved. Like if you have a message to bring to the world, work with you, hands down. We need more people out there that actually care, so that we can have a world that has empathy again. So thank you for the work you do.
Thanks, Jeff. It's always a pleasure, and thank you for your time today. I'm sure I've learned a lot as always, and I'm sure the people that are working a lot on this as well. So thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Take care of yourself.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Bye.